Thank you, Erin. Thank you, James. I am particularly happy to welcome this afternoon here from Riyadh two distinguished leaders, policymakers who are key to creating the famous neo-Renaissance, the future of our global economy, especially in Europe and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and really impacting the entire world. On my left, welcome His Excellency Fahad Al-Mubarak. You were recently appointed by His Majesty King Salman as a governor of the Central Bank of Saudi Arabia. Mabruk, really Mabruk. And my dear friend, His Excellency Bruno le Maire, the Minister of Economy and Finance of France. Bonjour, Monsieur le Ministre, et merci d'être avec nous.
Bonjour, Richard.
So welcome, Your Excellencies. My first question will be for you, Your Excellency Governor Mubarak. You recently served, and we know what we are talking about, what a year, as the Sherpa for the G20 in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, which, as we know, has hosted more than 200 events, mashallah, last year. So what were the urgent mandates that emerged during these meetings of world leaders? And how do you see this becoming implemented through the Kingdom as well across the G20 countries and actually the global economy?
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Richard, and I'm happy to be with you here. And Monsieur le Maire, it's an honor to share a virtual stage with you. Indeed, Saudi Arabia have been honored and humbled to be the presidency of the G20 last year, where we were in the top of all issues, and we were able to work with all our partners in the G20 to overcome the impact of the COVID-19. So definitely the group, France and our other members, we all have worked together. Global challenges, global crises require global solutions. And indeed, the G20 came forth to do just that. And we were able to implement several initiatives. And we were able to handle the crisis in the same way, almost even more than in 2008 and 9. The implementation continues because we are not out of the wood yet. We collectively been able to raise over $21 billion for research development of vaccine treatment and production and distribution. We've also been able to postpone many of the debt for poor countries, where it reached more than 14 billion for more than 40 countries. $11 trillion been injected. Saudi Arabia, while it led these efforts, along with our partners in G20, we have also done more efforts in Saudi Arabia. Thank God that when the crisis hit, we were in a very strong position as the benefit and the outcomes of our Vision 2030. So our technological infrastructure was there, our health systems are very strong, and along with our strict lockdown and measures, we've been able to waive the situation.
Thank you, Governor. Let me ask you almost the same question, Monsieur le Ministre. The G20 was originally a meeting of finance ministers. What did you discuss last year during the G20? And how do you see these developments taking shape? What issues are you working on towards the G20 in Rome in a few months in Italy?
First of all, thank you for inviting me for this very timely and useful future investment initiative. And I would like to thank the governor of the Central Bank of Saudi Arabia to attend this meeting with me. I really remember very well the very last G20 that we had physically in Riyadh. I think that everybody was aware of the situation and of the risk of having an important economic crisis, but nobody could imagine that this crisis would be so important, would have so detrimental effect on our economies, and would radically change the course of global development. And I think that we will have to draw some very concrete lessons from what we are living right now. And the next G20 in Rome should be the occasion to draw all the lessons that we should draw from this crisis. I think that there are 2 or 3 major lessons that I would like to put on the table just as a food for thought. The first one is that we have understood that when a crisis occurs, supporting economies swiftly and decisively is absolutely critical. That's exactly what we have done in Europe. We have decided to take very strong measures to support employees, to support private companies, and while doing so, we have avoided a rise in the unemployment figures, and we have avoided a rise in the bankruptcies all over Europe. This is the first lesson that I draw from this crisis. There is a need for a swift and very strong support to the economy when such a crisis occurs. The second lesson is that we have to stand together. That's exactly what we have done once again at the European level. We have decided to take the same kind of measures. We have had a very strong coordination, and we have been able, thanks to the leadership of Emmanuel Macron and Angela Merkel, to have common debt issuance, which is the first time in the European history we have decided to have common debt issuance just for the sake of having a better access to the market, to the financial market, and the possibility of having a very limited level of interest rates. The third lesson, and the last one that I would like to draw from this crisis, is the need of having a sustainable development and a sustainable growth. I think that everybody is aware now that we can no longer have the same kind of growth as the one we had before the crisis. There is a need for investing more in new technologies, in disruptive technologies, in innovation, for the sake of emitting less CO2 and having a sustainable economy. These are the 3 lessons that I would like to draw from this crisis, and which we will present during the next G20 in Rome.
Thank you, Mr. Ministre. We'll come back to you in a few seconds. Governor, Your Excellency, as Minister Le Maire just mentioned, I think we are totally different now from what we were a few months ago. We are all learning lessons. From your personal perspective, what lessons did you learn from the crisis that we need to take definitely into the future to avoid to come back to the statu quo?
Thank you. Indeed, I agree with all the lessons learned by His Excellency Mr. Le Maire. And definitely there are a lot of lessons. The first and foremost is that we have discovered our vulnerabilities. In our health system, it was very clear that across all countries, health systems, hospitals are not sufficient to handle such crisis. We had people in the corridors. We had people who cannot test, who had people who cannot be treated.
So we should put more money on
definitely, and we should
systems?
not be thinking of the health systems as a cost, but rather investment. Take, for example, some of the numbers I mentioned earlier. 11 trillion, 21 billion, 14 billion. Had we invested all of this and more, and we're not talking about the social cost and the job loss and the social impact. So all of this is a cost that we had to pay to overcome the impact, the health, economic, and the social. Had we invested that money in our health system, we would have been better off. What happened in 2008 and 9? We had to rebuild our banks, our financial systems, and that saved us the decade after and ongoing. As a matter of fact, this time, when the crisis hit, we have much stronger banks than before.
So we should rebuild our health.
This time, it's time to invest in the health system. Secondly, the safety net, the social safety net, is not there. People are out of jobs, and unless the government come up with an ad hoc, one-off support to those who are jobless or small businesses that need to retain their people, they need to subsidize that. We do not have a system that will be able to handle that situation where people off jobs for some time. So, and also we have learned the big lesson. There is no way out of global cooperation. It has to happen. And we proved it last year. The whole world came together and we were able to address it. Also, we have learned that one of the biggest saviors for us is working very closely with international organizations, WHO, IMF, World Bank, WTO, all of those are supporting the multilateralism efforts and the globalization.
Thank you, Governor. Monsieur le Ministre, as you know, in Europe, and particularly in France also, everyone is concerned about potential other lockdown and the consequence of these potential lockdowns. But how do you think, and how would you say, Monsieur le Ministre, Europe responded to the crisis in terms of economic and fiscal policy? You just gave some details about the lesson learned, but what else do you think, Monsieur le Ministre, is needed from government across Europe?
I think that we need to have, and we have, a kind of double-track approach. On the one hand, we have decided, and we will continue to do so, to support the economic sectors that have been the most gravely hit by the crisis. And we all made the same choice. In Germany, in Italy, in Spain, we have decided to bring a lot of money to tourism, restaurants, hotels, aeronautic industry, all the sectors that are really severely suffering from the consequences of the economic crisis. On the other hand, and that's the key point, we need also to implement as soon as possible our national recovery plans and our European recovery plan. You know that we have put 100 billion euros on the table at the national level for the sake of preparing the way out of the crisis, because my responsibility as the Minister in charge of Economy and Finance is to protect some of the sectors, but is also to prepare the future of the French nation and to prepare the future of European countries. And we will do so if we are able to put a lot of money on the new sectors, on the new value chains on which growth will be based in the very next future. I mean, for instance, hydrogen, and you know that we are cooperating on this key question with Saudi Arabia, the question of artificial intelligence, quantum calculation, electric car batteries. On all those fields, we want to put as much money as possible just to prepare what will be after the crisis and the kind of growth we will have after the crisis. If we want to be successful in all of those new technologies, and I fully share the point made by His Excellency on the necessity of having a very strong cooperation among nations, we need more cooperation among nations, especially at the European level. Let's take just the example of hydrogen, which is full of economic promises. If we want to be successful to produce our own green hydrogen in less than 10 years in Europe, we need to put our financial and technological resources all together. We put 7 billion euros on hydrogen for the next 10 years. Germany has decided to put 9 billion euros on this technology for the same next 10 years. We have decided to merge those 16 billion euros, and having 16 billion euros to invest in hydrogen should allow us to have our full independence on this key technology. So that's really my strong belief. We need more coordination, we need to put more money on innovation, and we have to think about the future, even if we are still facing the consequences of the health crisis.
Monsieur le Ministre, I know how close you are to the private sector and the entrepreneurs and the SMEs. We are here at FII as an investment conference watched by exactly 12,400 people the minute we are talking, who are part of this global business community. What is your message to the global investment community today?
My message is quite simple, Richard. come to France, invest in France, you are most welcome. You know that under the leadership of Emmanuel Macron, we are now the most attractive country all over Europe for foreign investments. And this will remain the case. We have very valuable assets, top universities, top engineers, data scientists, efficient innovation policies, great companies, important financing, and believe me, I will do my best, and we will do our best to remain the most attractive country for foreign investment in Europe. That's why we have decided, even in the midst of the most important economic crisis, to keep the same tax reductions we had decided from the very beginning of the mandate. We have decided to reduce the level of the French corporate tax to 25% by 2022 for all companies. We will stick to this schedule and to this figure, 25%. We have decided to reduce the level of the tax production by 10 billion euros this year. We will stick to this path and to this ambition, because we strongly believe that reducing the level of taxes will allow foreign investments to come to France. So once again, my message is quite simple. You are most welcome in France. For the time being, it will be through a video conference, but the investments do not need any physical presence, so do not hesitate to invest in France in 2021 and all over the next years.
Thank you. Time is flying. Governor, what is your message to in 1 minute, the message to all the investment community?
Well, I think my message is, I invite everybody to go back and listen to His Royal Highness Crown Prince's strategy of the Public Investment Fund, our sovereign wealth fund. We are planning to inject and invest over $6 trillion over the next 10 years. There are several sectors, new sectors, what we call the new economy in sports, culture, tourism, and the country is wide open for many, many opportunities. We have the most attractive infrastructure and financing schemes to help. You can read that Saudi Arabia is one of the highest countries ranking for doing business. And all our system governments are keen in supporting private sector, and especially SMEs.
Thank you. Monsieur le Ministre, allow me a personal question. It was a public information you got the COVID a few months ago. Are you a different man today than you were before?
Yes, I would respond very bluntly, yes. Because I'm aware that this disease is clearly something very special, I would say. So let's be all very cautious. Let's take the right measures to avoid our people to have that kind of experience. We all know that the COVID is one of the gravest diseases that we can have now. So let's be cautious while keeping the same ambition for our countries and for our economies.
Merci, Monsieur le Ministre, et restez en forme. Thank you very much for being with us. Thank you. We really appreciate your time. À bientôt. Your Excellency, thank you for being with us. It's always a pleasure to see you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.